So apparently, it's reboot season again, and Netflix is doubling down. Not only are they reviving Little House on the Prairie as a quote-unquote hopeful family drama meets epic survival tale, but they're also dusting off Land of the Lost for another go. And look, I get it, nostalgia sells. But Land of the Lost isn't just another vintage IP. It's a franchise with a weird, winding history of reinventions that range from cult classic to critical disaster. Before we talk about what Netflix might do with it, we need to talk about what this franchise is, what it was, and why it's never quite managed to find its footing. Because this isn't just a reboot, it's a litmus test for how well modern streaming understands the strange magic of Saturday morning sci-fi. So let's start at the beginning. The original Land of the Lost aired in 1974 as part of a Saturday morning block aimed squarely at kids. But here's the thing, it wasn't your typical Sugar Rush cartoon lineup. This show was different. It was darker, more cerebral, and honestly, kind of scary. The Sleestaks alone, those hissing, slow-moving reptilian creatures, were nightmare fuel for a generation, and that wasn't by accident. The show had real sci-fi DNA. The story followed the Marshalls, Rick Marshall, a park ranger, and his two kids, Holly and Will, who are swept through a dimensional rift into a prehistoric realm full of dinosaurs, strange artifacts, and bizarre creatures. The cast changed in Season 3 when Spencer Milligan, who played Rick, left the show over disagreements about merchandising royalties tied to his likeness. In his place, the show introduced Uncle Jack, played by Ron Harper, who took over as the new family anchor. Despite the shift, the show maintained its tone of eerie mystery and low-budget imagination. Sid and Marty Krofft, the creators, originally wanted Star Trek's Gene Roddenberry to be the head writer. He couldn't commit, but he recommended David Gerrold, best known for writing the Star Trek episode The Trouble with Tribbles. Once Gerrold came on board, more Star Trek alumni followed. Walter Koenig, who played Chekhov, even wrote the episode The Stranger in Season 1. That's why Land of the Lost felt so different from other kids' shows. It was being shaped by writers who were used to exploring big ideas, not just selling toys. And the legacy of that connection runs deep. Land of the Lost is one of the only non-Star Trek shows ever allowed to have a booth at STLV, the annual Star Trek convention in Las Vegas. That's not just a fun fact, it's a badge of honor. It means the show earned its place in the sci-fi canon if it came wrapped in rubber suits and stop-motion dinosaurs. Even though it only ran for 3 seasons, the original series developed a cult following. It was rerun on CBS in the 80s and eventually got a proper DVD release, something fans had been waiting on for years. That release gave the show a second life, especially for people who grew up with it and wanted to revisit that strange, slightly eerie world. Now, fast forward to the early 90s, a lot of people forget this, but Land of the Lost got its first reboot in 1991. It aired for 2 seasons on ABC with 26 episodes spread across 2 seasons, and then found a second home on Nickelodeon from 1995 to 1997. This version starred Timothy Bottoms, who, fun fact, would later play George W. Bush in That's My Bush on Comedy Central, a show created by Trey Parker and Matt Stone. The reboot kept the core premise but updated the visuals and leaned a little more into serialized storytelling. This time it followed the Porters, Tom Porter and his 2 kids, Annie and Kevin, who end up trapped in the same strange dimension. Instead of Chaka, the iconic Pakuni child from the original series, this version introduced Krista, a human girl who had fallen into the Land of the Lost years prior and had been surviving on her own. It wasn't groundbreaking, but it respected the tone of the original. It didn't mock it. And yet, despite running for 2 seasons, it never got an official DVD release. The only way to watch it now is through internet bootlegs, usually old VHS recordings from Nickelodeon airings. It's like this version of the show got lost in its own time loop. And then came 2009, the Will Ferrell movie, the Danny McBride Chaos, the big budget, big studio, big swing adaptation that missed the mark so hard, it practically erased the franchise from public consciousness. Now, to be fair, the movie did do one thing right. It brought the original series to DVD. That's probably the best thing to come out of it. But the film itself, it was a tonal train wreck. Instead of embracing the eerie, thoughtful weirdness of the original, it went full slapstick. It turned Land of the Lost into a 2-hour Saturday Night Live sketch. And critics didn't hold back. Peter Travers of Rolling Stone said, Will Ferrell and Danny McBride can find the dumb fun in anything. Too bad that Land of the Lost is so much less than anything. Owen Gleiberman at Entertainment Weekly wrote, it has stray, amusing tidbits, but overall it leaves you feeling splattered. And the Wall Street Journal called it dramatically, thematically, and artistically bankrupt, not worth the celluloid it's printed on. That's brutal, but also kind of accurate. The movie didn't just misunderstand the tone, it flattened it into parody, and audiences weren't having it. It flopped, and the franchise went dormant again. Which brings us to now. Netflix is developing a new reboot of Land of the Lost in partnership with Legendary Television and the Croft family. According to Deadline, it's still in early development. No cast, no writer attached yet. Just a concept and a legacy. And that legacy is complicated, because this isn't just a show about a family in a lost world. It's a show that's been rebooted, reimagined, and recontextualized so many times that no one seems to agree on what it is anymore. Is it a kid's adventure, a sci-fi allegory, a parody, a prestige drama in disguise? Now, here's where I want to lay my cards on the table, because I've got concerns. Real ones. Let's start with the tone. My first worry is that Netflix might take a page out of their Lost in Space reboot playbook. You know, the one where everything went really dark really quickly, because that's what was trending at the time. And while it worked aesthetically, it also stripped the source material of its more whimsical, imaginative charm. There's a real danger here that Land of the Lost will get the same treatment, a sleek, brooding veneer that forgets how strange and dreamlike the original was. If everything's high stakes, emotional trauma, and grim world building, we lose the magic. And if this show, especially this show, needs the magic. Then there's the structure. Netflix doesn't do episodic storytelling anymore. Everything is serialized. Everything is binge-ready. And for some shows, that's fine and dandy. But Land of the Lost was built on self-contained mysteries, weekly discoveries, and that sense that anything could happen from episode to episode. Think about a show like Lost, not just in name, but in spirit. It built its mythology slowly over 6 seasons. The first three seasons had 22 to 24 episodes each, and no, we're not here to debate that ending, because nobody wins that conversation. What does matter is the time it gave itself to build mystery through layers, questions, and reveals, something Land of the Lost inherently needs to thrive. With Netflix, we'll be lucky to get 10 episodes, possibly just 8. And even if the show does find an audience, we could be waiting a long time before we see more of it. Look at Squid Game. Season 1 dropped in September of 2021, became the biggest show on the platform's history, and still didn't get a second season until December of 2024. That 3-year gap caused a massive 42.5% drop in viewership. For a mystery-driven show like Land of the Lost, that kind of delay wouldn't just be inconvenient, it'd be destructive. And compressed runtimes and long delays aren't just logistical issues. They fundamentally undermine how these stories are supposed to unfold. There's not enough real estate to build a compelling mystery, to establish the rules of this strange world, to get us invested in the characters and still leave room for the unknown. What we risk getting is a movie chopped into chapters, a limited run that feels like one long cutscene rather than a series of meaningful episodes. Cobra Kai is a great example, not because it's a personal favorite, but because it perfectly illustrates the problem. None of its episodes stand on their own. They're all context, all connective tissue. Remove the previous installment, and the current one collapses. That approach would be a mistake for Land of the Lost. This is a story that needs to build wonder, not just momentum. Each episode should feel like stepping deeper into a surreal wilderness, not flipping another page in a screenplay. If Netflix goes full prestige miniseries, tight narrative, no filler, they'll miss what made the original weird and wonderful. They'll trade discovery for efficiency. And that's the tightrope they're walking. With no cast or writer announced, there's potential here, massive potential, but also risk. Land of the Lost is more than IP, it's a vibe. a strange, uneasy, surprisingly sophisticated vibe born from Saturday mornings, crafted by Star Trek veterans, and kept alive by fans who saw past the rubber suits and into something mythic. If Netflix gets that, if they really get that, this reboot could finally stick the landing. But if they don't, if they flatten it again into parody or prestige-like melodrama, we might end up right back where we started, lost. The truth is, Land of the Lost has always been more than dinosaurs and time portals. It's a mirror to its moment, whether that moment's groovy, earnest, iconic, or overly polished. Every version tells us something about where audiences were at the time, and maybe this new take will too, but the question is, will it respect what came before, or try too hard to overwrite it? So, let's open it up. What's your favorite version of Land of the Lost? Are you excited about the Netflix reboot or worried it might miss the mark again? Drop your thoughts in the comments.